Welcome to Combat Sports Talk, a podcast dedicated to UFC and Bellator discussion, the MMA community, and combat sports in general. I'm your host, Ryan Smith, and joining me this week is the man who can't find his keys to victory, John Keys, and also a late fight replacement, KC, the got knocked out Onyebuchi.
Look at this. Man.
Really?
That's what it says on the run sheet. I don't understand why you put that.
That's what it said on the run sheet, man.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know what to do with that. I don't know why you're being so self-deprecating.
Fake news.
I know, right? I know.
You're just such a self-deprecator, man. That's what I like about you.
You're such a fake newser.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is episode 100. Whoop whoop. Bop, bop, bop.
Wait, what episode is this?
Huh?
What episode is this?
100.
Sure.
Man, you know what? You guys, how dare you guys pan the great celebration of 100? That makes me so sad that you guys did that. That I'm sad.
I mean, technically, you should have been hitting red lines on your condenser right now because you're supposed to be a lot more hyped than that.
I mean, I can't get any more hyper than that. I mean,
Wake the kids up.
This 100. Pop, pop, pop. It has taken 4 years.
Pop, pop.
4 years, but we finally made it. Just in time to cover MMA's New Year, MMA's 4th of July, the Christmas all wrapped up in one International Fight Week. We had 2 belts on the line. We had the best the UFC has to offer. We had Hall of Famers, history-making performances. UFC 239 will go down as one of the most exciting cards in the history of the sport. Let's get right into the action with the official decision. The official decision. This is the official decision. This is where we look at the fights that were on Saturday night. UFC 239, Jones versus Santos, Saturday, July 6, 2019, at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada. We had 5 fights on the card. First fight of the night, Michael Chiesa defeated Diego, the Nightmare Dream, Lionheart Sanchez via unanimous decision.
I mean, it started off with an amazing stare down. Can we first acknowledge that? Like, Sanchez came in there with some energy. Holy.
Well, you know, I don't know that anybody does a stare down better than Diego Sanchez. I mean, Joanna Jędrzejczyk, before she got defeated twice, 3 times, she used to be pretty dope with the stare downs. But Diego Sanchez, I think, has the most intense stare down that is not fake.
Well, first, I just got to give a quick shout out to John for actually laughing at my Lionel Richie reference.
I saw that. No, JJ doesn't come close to Diego. I mean, Diego, actually, this was the stare down that he gave Chiesa was actually a mild one, because I can remember the stare down that he's done before this, where his veins are actually popping out. Okay, and he's like staring at them like he's ready to come out. His skeleton is about to bite him. Okay, that's the stare down I remember. So this one was a little tame, but it was still good nonetheless.
All right. So one of the things that we have to talk about, because this came out after our 99 show, and this was Diego Sanchez's epic speech that Ariel Helwani got him backstage or whatever. At Media Day, I don't know exactly where they were, and he just started asking Diego Sanchez, like, you know, what's been up and things like that. And Diego Sanchez went on what is arguably one of the greatest monologues, soliloquies, whatever you want to call it, that I think we've ever heard from a fighter in the UFC.
Yes, it was WWE worthy. All right, let's not even play. It was like The Rock worthy.
I thought he was trolling initially, but as it continued on, it's like, oh dear, he believes this.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, this man is serious. This man is 100% serious about how he was feeling that day. He is feeling his feelings that day.
Yeah, he was like, I'm trying to think of some of the things that he said. If you would think after 100 episodes, I would have queued up the audio for Diego Sanchez talking, because this is an audio podcast. But he was saying things like, "Don't put him in the box," and he was holding a box. Remember, he had a box and he was showing it to the camera, like, "Don't put me in a box." He was talking about how he was, how he had not been getting the attention that he deserved from Jackson Winklejohn, and that was one reason why he left. And he was working with a new person, Josh Fabian, his coach, and he wasn't working with anyone else. He was only going to have one person in his corner training him. And I kind of feel like that this is that moment where, after you hear the whole manifesto from Diego Sanchez about how he's resurging and how this fight with Chiesa, who's written him off, everybody's written him off. I, on record, wrote Diego Sanchez off, and he was like, "This is my time. I'm going to come back and I'm going to win the title that has always eluded him." And this was the guy that was going to get him there, Josh Fabia, who I don't think anyone has heard of.
No, I've never heard of this guy.
So Josh Fabia is the founder of the School of Self-Awareness. It usually works with special forces and law enforcement, but he works with thousands of people across the globe, and this is coming from MMA Junkie, so shout out to you guys. Travels all around the world. He helped people deal with emotional trauma and has helped Sanchez prepare for the fight in all areas in ways that he believes nobody else can, including Jackson Wink themselves. What's crazy is the quotes. So Fabia, who is the only guy in Diego Sanchez's corner, says, "Yeah, we do mitts. Yeah, I'm wrestling with him. I'm the one cooking the meals. I'm the one handling the body work. I'm doing 9 jobs. So yeah, it's a little different than Wink and Greg and any other trainer, coach in the world. There's nobody else doing all of that. There's nobody else that can do all that because they're compartmentalized it and they got their degrees in one area." Okay, there is a reason why the recipe is to have an entire team around you who specialize in one thing. Like, you want people who are deep in their field of knowledge, whether it's striking, whether it's, jiu-jitsu, wrestling, Muay Thai, wrestling. You want people who are deep. Like, can you imagine? Okay, yeah, my Brazilian jiu-jitsu coach, he's yellow belt. He's a yellow belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
He used to be a trainer at Title Boxing.
Yeah, he's a title boxing trainer, and
Wow.
he almost got his degree in nutrition.
Oh man! All right, I have a title box gym like right around the corner from me, so don't find me, please. I had nothing to say in this.
No, we're not saying. No.
They trained me for fighting Ryan and didn't prepare me for southpaw. So.
What's crazy is that they trained me for fighting KC and taught me how to fight as southpaw. So I guess someone paid a little bit more.
Money bags over here.
No.
Somebody paid for that premium package.
Listen, I'm going to tell you like this. I'm not going to talk any crap about title boxing because title boxing helped me lose like 50 pounds when I was training for KC. And then our double champ, George G Money Stalwart, he is a title boxing trainer. So if you guys have something y'all want to say about TB, you go handle it with GS.
No thanks. Okay.
Okay.
Let's say I love kickboxing. One of their trainers.
Yeah.
Here's the thing that should have been a red flag for Diego Sanchez. Okay? In the quotes that his coach, Josh Fabia, said, he says, "I'm here to do my job. I don't foresee needing to do the in-between rounds thing. It's during the fight he's going to need to hear me in that first round."
Is that really a red flag?
Oh, he doesn't think that he's going to need to give any kind of instruction or direction between rounds?
How many fights does Diego have? Like,
Mo Buncha?
He should know what's happening.
Yeah, he's had a couple 3 fights.
Listen, how many fights has John Jones had? And he's still getting coached between rounds. How many fights does Amanda Nunes has? You've got these people who are on the cream of the crop in the sport, and they've got entire teams around them, and they're getting coached between rounds and look for this, look for that. This is what he's doing. You need to adjust here. Like, all of those things, those little adjustments are happening on the other side of the ring. Like, if you're not adjusting and it's just go out and fight, you might as well get Ronda's coach, Coach Edmond, to go and coach you.
Exactly.
Wow.
We see how that worked out.
Well, there's a difference there between, because this coach, Coach Fabia, is pretty much saying he's trusting his students' fight IQ. Okay, which, let's put it out there, I think almost 40 fights for Diego. Okay, maybe less, but he's been in some scraps, so he's trusting in his students' fight IQ to do what he does. Coach Edmund, Rousey's coach, that fool sat there and hyped her up to a beating, okay? When keeping it real goes wrong, okay? And it went all the way wrong on that point, okay? So there's a distinct difference, all right? I that's all I got to say about that.
Yeah, I don't see the difference, because if you're saying that I'm not going to tell my fighter how to adjust and what I'm seeing from a third party position, like there's you get the tunnel vision when you're fighting. Like, I remember the first time that I was fighting KC, and it was at the end of the first round. He just punched me in the nose, and I went back to the corner like, freaking get me out of here. And this teenager who's cornering me is telling me, is like, listen, you need to start moving to the right. You need to throw the jab to keep him on the end of your jab and do all these kind of things. And that's what I started doing.
Tell me a darn thing.
You see? Now you see what happens. You see what happens now. There you go. Your corner did not coach you. My corner coached me. There you go.
Premium package, basic package, people. $19.99 was the difference. All right.
Didn't know he was southpaw. Didn't know he was getting coaching.
Got him.
Wait, let me look at Title Boxing, man. Let me see their packages right quick, and I can tell you which one that you got, Casey, and which one that Ryan got, real quick. Okay.
I might have just signed up for the 5 beginner lessons or something. Nonsense.
Oh man.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, that's so funny. Hey, before we go on, I want to say that Diego Sanchez, because while it was entertaining and inspiring, and I talked to George about this during the live recording. It was inspiring to hear Diego Sanchez kind of go back to that nightmare type of persona. But it's also scary because Diego Sanchez has absorbed the second most number of punches to the head behind BJ Penn. BJ Penn is at 1,358. Sanchez is at 1,239. Diego Sanchez talked about him not having CTE, but I don't know that you can get that many punches to the head in the brawls that he's been in and the ways that he's been knocked out. Like, if you remember when Matt Brown, the immortal Matt Brown, just walked over and just freaking gave him an elbow to the head and just dropped him. Like,
was it him that got the elbow?
Yeah, it was Diego Sanchez. Wow. Matt Brown just destroyed him. Like, those types of those leave marks and on the inside of your head, not on the outside, not just on the outside. And when Sanchez was talking about all the marks from all the people that he's taken, what I thought was pretty funny was that the mark that he got from Diego Sanchez, that he got from BJ Penn, where he pointed on his face is not where that mark was.
Wow.
He pointed on his face like on his cheek. I'm like, no, BJ Penn got you right across the forehead, had skin hanging. Like, go back and watch that fight, Diego Sanchez. You won't believe it. Because I had picked Diego Sanchez in that fight to beat BJ Penn, and he was getting mauled, and then like late in the fight he got an elbow to the forehead, and it was just it was Kerry. All right, let's go on to the next fight. John Blachowicz defeated Luke Rockhold via knockout in round 2. Talk about destruction there. Like this fight was, I thought Luke Rockhold, honestly, I felt like this was a dangerous fight for Luke, because when you're moving up to a heavier weight class, you just don't know how it's going to be in a competitive environment with these bigger fighters. Because if you're moving up from 185 to 205, that means you're fighting heavyweights who can make 205. So you're not necessarily fighting the lighter guys that are 205ers that can make 185. And it's always a dicey type of thing when a fighter fights his first fight after moving weight classes. And I felt like Blachowicz is a solid enough fighter that he would give Luke Rockhold trouble. Luke Rockhold got a lot of trouble because he got knocked out.
Man. And before we go any further, I'm sorry to do this. Let me say one thing about Michael Chiesa. I doubted him. I seriously doubted him. If anybody listens to last week's podcast, I said that there wasn't a chance. When I saw him go to that ring, I was like, yeah. Extra mayo, extra onions, extra pickles, please. Yes. Sourdough bread. Yes, I get it. But he was huge. Okay, he was way bigger than what I've seen him before. And I thought about it. Last time I saw him, he was at 155. He looked gaunt at 155. I was like, this dude ain't gonna do it. He comes in there at 170. I'm just like, oh my God, and he's ragdolling Diego pretty much. He was having his way with him. It was pretty bad. So that's all I got to say about that. On to Jan Blachowicz versus Rockhold. Yeah, that punch. Yeah. As far as I'm concerned, Rockhold has a serious problem with keeping his hands down. Almost like an arrogance with him, and it was what it was.
Boom! Rocked him.
It was pretty brutal.
Yeah, that's right, Casey.
So I was talking the whole time on mute, trying to cut in. Like, how am I getting no respect right now?
We're not putting no respect on his name. Yeah.
Put some respect on me. Listen to me.
I'm sorry, but go ahead, sir. I do apologize.
No, you're good. I honestly, so of course, I'm always the contrarian when it comes to these things, but I don't think that Luke Rockhold did that poorly. I think the first round he got messed up at the end of the round, but he looked confident and he was moving well. Yeah, his hands are always terribly placed, but I can't say that he had a bad fight leading up to that.
No, he didn't. It's just that he's arrogance.
Well, I just felt like he wasn't doing much. Like, it was one of those things. He was pushing Jan Blachowicz up against the cage, and he was, showing a lot of strength, but he wasn't doing a lot of damage. The first couple of kicks when the fight started, those were pretty damaging. But after that, it just kind of was a wrestling match, a grappling, trying to get position. And then when we got to the end of the round, right as the bell was, or the horn was blowing, or the bell was ringing, that's when Jan Blachowicz throws a head kick that just, it changed the dynamic of the fight. That Luke Rockhold at that point was probably out of it.
Well, he was out of it leading up to the head kick. I think he took two to the face right before that.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think he was going down no matter what.
Yeah. So it was. We started seeing the beginning of the end at the end of the first round, and then it wasn't long into the second round where it was just, all Jan Blachowicz, and then it Pakaya.
Yeah.
Was
So-
there bad blood between them? Because the way that they ended the first round, it just looked like pure hate.
Well, Luke had talked a lot of smack, okay, to Jan, but Jan, and I think it was just an anger beat after that. Okay, when he got to the ring, he just decided to let him know how he truly felt about the disparaging comments that Luke made.
Yeah, one of the things they asked him about was that Luke Rockhold said he had small feet.
I'm telling you, this whole trash talking thing, it doesn't work out well.
Not this time it didn't. So here's a couple of things. This resulted in Luke Rockhold's second broken jaw. And this is, Jan Blachowicz is a mid-tier light heavyweight fighter. So the question is, where does Luke Rockhold go from here? Because his first fight didn't go so well, got his face broken. You got Dana White saying, hey, don't forget you were Ralph Lauren male model. Why don't you go and do that? You seem to be a little bit better suited for that, which I think is very telling about the value that Dana White has for Luke Rockhold actually in the UFC.
Oh yeah. It's been kind of apparent that Dana feels a certain type of way about Luke Rockhold, and yeah, when he told him that, yeah, I think he should retire. That tells you a lot.
The other thing that we were talking about on the live recording was the fact that it doesn't seem like Luke Rockhold is training with Khabib and Daniel Cormier. It's like he's still in Florida. So do you think that him not training with the best of the best, the cream of the crop, had anything to do with his flop?
Nope.
Yes.
What? I mean, this has been his style for a while, so I don't think it would have mattered. Like, if you're fighting a bunch of wrestlers, like he surely didn't commit on any of his takedowns. He did not commit. But the problem wasn't really with his wrestling. It was his standing game that is just so flawed. Like, I could expose it.
I don't know.
I mean,
like I said, I think he need, iron sharpens iron. Okay. He needed to be with the very best. He needed to train with Cormier. He needed to train with Khabib, okay? Because you got to, especially when you go into a new division, you just don't go in there with your regular pants and your regular shirt. You need to go ahead and come out with them smooth underwear that he's used to wearing. Get the silk suits going on. He's got the Gucci Ray-Ban, Tony Stark Ray-Bans going on. He needs to go in there on his best game and put everybody on notice, saying, look, I'm here, I'm arrogant, I don't know what to do with my hands during press conferences. This is what I do. All right, that's what he should have did.
Okay, so I don't know if he trained for this fight, but at AKA, but he trained in Florida, starting with David Branch, won his first fight, and then he's 0-2 after that. So he's 1-2 in his last 3 fights, training in Florida. At AKA, he was had a lot of wins. A lot of wins. I'm just listen.
He was winning.
Yeah,
we got a stack on age on top of this too.
Okay. I mean, you can, but Luke Rockhold, while he was training at AKA, I mean, how far back do you want to go? He beat Michael Bisping in 2014. He via rear naked guillotine choke. He choked out Lyoto Machida, knocked out Chris Weidman to win the title, and then lost to Bisping. And then after that, he was like, "Screw AKA, I'm going to Florida." Beat David Branch, and then lost to Yoel Romero, and then now lost to Jan Blachowicz. So I don't know how many data points you need
to say that he needs to go back to AKA.
To say he needs to go back to AKA.
Yeah,
look, he needs to go back. He needs to go back to Cali.
I don't understand this reference.
Why?
Yeah, no, you're being trolled right now. Don't fall for it.
That does not compute. Okay.
Yeah, you either need to go. You need to either go back to AKA or you need to go back to Ralph Lauren. But Florida ain't where it's at right now.
All right, so you're on record as saying you want to fight Luke Rockhold. So,
right now, hell yeah. I just got to land one punch to the jaw. It's already broken. Now, once he's healed, that's a whole other story. I don't want to get question mark kicked after that. I'll be quick to say I'm sorry, Mr. Rockhold, but right now, I can talk all the smack I want. Hell, I'll take him and freaking Henry Cejudo at the same time. Let's do it. I fight all the injured fighters. Just line them up. We'll do it UFC 1 style. We'll start a tournament. I'll be like Royce Gracie. I'll just go through the whole thing. Fight 5 fighters in one night.
Hey, man. All
right. The third fight of the night was Jorge Masvidal, who defeated Ben Askren via Tiger knee. 5-second victory, the fastest knockout in UFC history.
Should have been 3 seconds.
It should have been because he was out before he hit the ground.
Yeah, it should have been literally 3 seconds. I think they took the extra 2 seconds because the ref tried to scramble into position. So technically it was 3 seconds, folks. Because it was pretty much, it was probably the most vicious knee that I've. Next to Michael Venom Page is the first one that comes up to mind, but this one is a very close second.
Yeah, Aljamain Sterling has also got a really vicious knee knockout, flying knee. So go ahead, Casey.
Nope, never mind. Mine was irrelevant.
Okay, what I was going to say was when you lose in 5 seconds, we have to talk about the buffer factor. Ben Askren I really want to say that Ben Askren set a record for the buffer factor fell here. It's a 17x buffer factor. That means that Ben Askren could have been knocked out 17 times in the minute and 25 seconds it took to announce the fight. That's pretty rough.
Yes.
So here's a couple of questions for you guys. Was it a lucky knee? A lot of people are saying it's a lucky knee.
Absolutely not. There's been footage, and there has been talk that he trained for this knee during camp. There's video footage of him actually doing the knee. There is a text to Dustin Poirier from Mike Brown saying that he is going to do the running knee to start off the match. So,
oh wow, I didn't hear that one.
Oh yeah, there's a text. There's I thought I posted a video that showed that text.
Oh,
that he did it like 3 hours before the actual fight. That he's gonna do a running knee to start off the fight. So yeah, there was no luck to this. And people, it was perfectly timed. He knew exactly what Ben Askren was going to do. So he did. It's just like McGregor and Aldo.
So where I saw the beauty in this, whether he practiced it or not, and of course I know he practiced. I've seen the video. But what gets missed in this is that it was a flying knee that knocks him out. But where I see the strategy and the gamesmanship in this is the fact that he kind of goes in hands high like he's going to throw a 1-2, and knowing that you've got Ben Askren who's a wrestler, like Askren just goes to his immediate reflex. Someone's coming up high, chest up. I can take a double leg, and this is an easy takedown. So he drops down right into knee position, and if you watch it, it almost looks like a switch knee there, right? So yes. everything that's happening is working against Askren, right? So he's looking up, he's looking down, misdirection, boom, I'm out. Like that's why you can't call it, even if you hadn't seen any of the training, you can't call that a lucky knee because that was perfectly set up for that type of opponent.
So Ariel Helwani asked Ben Askren himself, and what Ben Askren said was, I see a few people say that what really annoys me about Ben Askren, by the way, is that he calls Jorge Masvidal George. It really annoys me. Like, dude's name is Jorge Masvidal. We all know it's Jorge. We've reached this point in our nation where we understand the correct pronunciation of Hispanic names. Jorge.
I understand.
I believe you mean Latinx.
Yeah.
Well, why would I say Latinx? because there are no females named Jorge that I know of. So maybe Latino.
You weren't talking specifically about the name Jorge.
Fair
You
enough.
said the
Yes.
types of names.
Okay. Yes. Okay. You are correct.
You guys gotta understand, Ben is like the ultimate troll. Okay, he will troll. He trolls with the best of them, and he trolled with Jorge during this entire time. And we just didn't take into account that Jorge is not the one. Once again, this is another guy that I kind of discounted until I realized his fight record. He is 30 now. He's 32-13, but he has he's been there and done that, and he wasn't going to take no disrespect from him whatsoever. So when he got his chance, he was going to be, like he said, he wanted to beat him for 15 minutes, but it was what it was.
So the thing that Ben Askren said was that while it's not going to happen 100 out of 100 times, it's like landing a knee like that takes a lot of skill. And he acknowledged that it wasn't a lucky knee. So if Ben Askren is saying it wasn't a lucky knee, the people who were saying that this was a lucky knee need to stop it. Just stop it. Now, the next question for you guys, because I've heard a lot of people go on and on about this. Were the extra punches necessary?
Yes, because that's how they're trained. They're trained to fight until the referee pulls them off. I don't like it. It's unfortunate, but it's a necessary evil because this falls back to UFC 1, believe it or not. Hoist Gracie versus Ken Shamrock. Hoist Gracie had Ken Shamrock in a side choke. Okay, had him choked out, and you can see Ken Shamrock tapping. However, the ref did not pull them off, and Hoist let go for a second, and the ref was like, okay, continue fighting. The ref did not see Ken try to tap. So what did Ken try to do? He tried to continue fighting. Hoist put him back in that choke real quick and kept it on there until the ref really did see him tap that time. And that's why they said, okay, from this point on, you stay on them until the ref pulls you off. There you go.
KC, do you agree with that?
I'm always a fan of going until it's officially done. Like, I don't know. It's that's the case in every other sport. Like, you don't celebrate before you're in the end zone. You don't stop running the 100 meters till you're past the line. Like, why is it different in fighting that, well, he might be out, so let's just assume. Yeah. Nope. I say you just keep going. There was nothing wrong about it.
Yeah, I agree. What also helped me, understand what was going on in the ring was in the post-fight press conference that Jorge Masvidal had, and he's like, "Listen, I actually thought he was going to get up."
He was trolling. Come on now.
No, I don't. If you watch if you watch the video, because it's ridiculous after having seen the video that Ben Askren was going to get up, but in the moment, he lands the knee, and he instantly, like, he is scrambling to get back to throw punches. Like, I believe him that he did not know that Ben Askren was knocked out the way that he was knocked out until the ref pulled him off, and then you could see Ben Askren in stiffy position.
Yeah, he had a perma stiff. Okay.
Yeah, dude must have been out for like 2 minutes.
I think there's a pill for that.
Yeah.
Contact the doctor. That's we got to get that drop now. I got to write that down. We got to get the drop. So it's like,
so I believe
contact the doctor if
a new knockout. We're just gonna call that the blue pill.
Yes, because Casey doesn't like the term stiffy, even though it is appropriate to the body position that Ben Askren was in. His toes were making fingers crossed, like, please let this stop, let this beating stop.
He's got to make me a bird so I can fly far, far away.
That's right. So
well, hold on. Let's talk about the after. What we saw Ben there in his position. Jorge, he kind of did a little dirty. I don't know how I feel about it. I honestly don't.
So before you get into the showboating question, I want,
Yes.
Ben Askren was on Ariel Helwani's show, and so what he said was about the extra punches. Actually, I don't care. It happens. I knew when I signed up. I knew what I signed up for. Do I like Jorge Masvidal? No. If you asked me before the fight if he knocked me out, would he take some extra shots? I would have said, yep, he definitely is. I antagonized the crap out of him. But that was on purpose. I was trying to get him to first accept the fight, second, make him mad. So obviously, like those extra punches, it's fine. It's probably what should be expected in a scenario like that. So, I think that Ben Askren absolutely gets the nature of the sport. And given all the trash talk that he did, I respect Ben Askren for saying, hey, listen, I got what I deserved. Now, showboating. Everybody's mad about Jorge Masvidal's showboating. And you were getting ready to go into that. So go, huh?
Not everybody.
A lot of people.
I'm conflicted. All right. Because there's a part of me that says that, be respectful. But then there's a part of me that sat there and said, well, when keeping it real goes wrong, you talked all that mess to the wrong person, and he from the streets. So when you got knocked out, you're lucky that's all he did was make fun of you for a little bit.
Well, for now, because if Askren is seen in Whole Foods, then it might still be on site.
Yeah. He's gonna punch him in his face for living. Yeah, that's definitely in Masvidal's mind. He's not done with him yet.
It is hard to mount a more meaningful defense for those actions than what Jorge Masvidal said in the aftermath at the press conference. It was very succinctly said. It's that we're okay for some reason with people talking trash before the fights. Like, we can talk about people's kids, we can talk about their wives, we can talk about their religion, and somehow that's seen as, well, it's just trying to get under the guy's skin. But the moment you prove it in the ring and then you want to talk, now there's this double standard, like, oh no, how can you do this? Like, I don't know that there's a salient rebuttal that you can have to say that, well, one instance is okay while the other is just poor sportsmanship. It just comes down to whether or not you like the fighter, if we're being honest.
Mm-hmm.
No, I completely agree with you. I mean, the thing is this. That I am the person who's most in favor of trash talking to promote a fight. Like that's I love it. I like it when it's done skillfully. As much as Ben Askren is the troll of trolls, he got what he deserved, and I think that Ben Askren understands that. Like, yeah, I antagonized him, and he has every right to go in on me. And what was even better is the whole first half of the interview with Ariel Helwani. He's like, yeah, I'm actually surprised more people aren't going in on me, given the fact that for the past 10 years, I've trolled and antagonized everybody. And it's like he just never thought that he would be on the losing end in this way. But it's like he understands that this is what you get when you talk smack and then you lose. Right. And if he understands that, and we can all understand that this fighter understands it, then I just don't think anyone should have a problem with what happened, what Jorge Masvidal did, because it is absolutely his right in that moment. All that buildup that has gone into this fight, he finally emerges victorious. Let him do what he wants to do.
And that's why I said I'm conflicted, because, like I said, there's a part of me that says be respectful, but then there's also a part of me that's like, you got what you got, homie. I'm not even, there's no denying that. And that's what I'm saying. Like I said, conflicted.
You're respectful when someone breaks their leg, kicking the check, getting their kick checked. You don't go and dig a hole and pretend to bury them when they're lying with a broken leg. You don't do that. If someone is bleeding and they didn't talk any smack, they were respectful, yeah, you don't do that. But if someone was
Right.
trolling you and antagonizing you the whole lead up, every time you turn around, they're in your face saying something. At that point, it's all fair game. Now,
Which is why I'm Team Flying Eagle.
Yes, because Connor did go way beyond the line. You don't talk about family. You don't talk about your family. You don't talk about your religion. Okay, you don't talk about things like that because now that part I do agree upon. If you go to that level, then all bets are off. You get what exactly? If he hit you with the car after when you're walking out in the parking lot and you get hit, that's on you, man. You shouldn't have been talking about the kids.
No,
okay?
that goes a little bit too far. Like
Dude,
I was with you guys up till the Flying Eagle. Now, if after Conor McGregor tapped out from the choke, Habib would have sat in his face and been like, "What now?" and was in his face and doing that little Russian kick step thing that they do. Like, yeah, that's fine. Like, absolutely. Once you scale the cage and you jump and you start attacking other people, now you've gone too far. Like, we can see that the cage creates a wonderful line. It's a beautiful line. If it's in the cage and you're taunting someone for taunting you, it's fair game. When you jump out and physically attack someone in the audience, it is no longer fair game.
Well,
Yes,
if you want to create that line, then you do all of your trash talking in the cage.
Exactly.
No.
Dylan Dennis got what? Hey, he don't be talking. Okay, that's all I'm saying. Don't have somebody talking, especially on something that emotionally charged. He talked about him. He talked about his dad. He talked about his wife.
We have a whole episode. We have a whole episode hashing this out. Like, we don't need to get back into this conversation. There's a whole hour-long episode just talking about Conor and Habib.
Yeah.
So I'll bring it back to these two though, real
right.
with Askren and
George.
Jorge.
And I didn't have a senile moment.
Masvidal.
The thing that I really feel that I can. It's hard because so many people love this trolling aspect. Like, it's become a big part of this sport. But I've just been so thrown off by the comments of people who are like, "Oh, it just shows the weakness of mine that Masvidal had because he couldn't handle this loss like a man." And it's like, so you couldn't apply that same logic to Askren, who had the of mind to not just be more prepared for a fight instead of taking your time talking trash at every single opportunity, even the stare downs, the weigh-ins, everything.
No, like, I completely disagree with that because, you don't prepare for a 5-second knockout flying knee. That, like, Ben Askren was super prepared for the fight. He got caught. Like, you can't just say like, oh well, Ben Askren clearly didn't do his homework. No, that's not the case. Ben Askren could have been quiet, and if he'd gotten knocked out, then what? Like, he should have been more prepared. No, he got caught. That's it. He had a game plan. He didn't get a chance to execute it, and so therefore, this is where I'm one of those guys that's like, well, you got to kind of run this one back because we didn't actually see what happens when Ben Askren and Jorge Masvidal fight, because the fight ended in 5 seconds. That's clearly not representative of two top level welterweights in the world. That's not representative. So we didn't actually learn anything about Jorge Masvidal versus Ben Askren. It's that once
Masvidal knows
do what?
How to game plan. We learned that Masvidal knows how to game plan.
And we also learned that Dana he had a special moment when that knockout happened. All right, I don't care what nobody says. Trust me, Dana was in ecstasy seeing Ben Askren get knocked out.
I'm sure he was. I'm sure he was. I just don't think that you can fairly say, oh, Ben Askren didn't take this seriously. Ben Askren didn't prepare. No, he's a professional.
No, the comment is
he's
more
19-0. He's been
say,
fighting for a long time.
Yeah, no, it's more for the people who say it's a weakness of mine that Masvidal would feel the need to taunt, but we don't say it's a weakness of mine for Askren to taunt in the first place.
Well, see, that's a double standard. And as far as I'm concerned, that shows the type of person that they are. Okay, when you're gonna sit there and be hypocritical on one and not critical on the other. No, we're not. No, can't do it.
Yeah, well, I agree with that. Like, no, you can't fault Masvidal for taunting at the end of the fight after he's knocked a dude out and set a record, when that dude gave him every motivation to do such a thing.
Yeah.
Like, I think we're all in agreement here. So let's go on. UFC bantamweight champion Amanda Nunes defeated Holly Holm via head kick destruction. Boom. First round.
She Holly Holm.
That's what George Stallworth said.
I mean, that's all you can say about it, man.
So
I can say a little more.
All right, what you got, Casey?
Right.
Let's hear what you got.
I think that there's such beauty in how Amanda Nunes has taken out every former bantamweight champion for the women's division. Like, the fact that she's got so many tools in her arsenal, and this just showed the professionalism of Nunes to have worked in there, looked so comfortable against Holmes, and just defeated Holmes with Holmes' own signature style. And there was no point that you really felt that Nunes was under pressure or this might get out of hand. She was just really calculated with every part of that fight. And that's what's so impressive about her, is she never looks like she's in trouble. Like, she just knows how to recover well and stay in a fight and get it done. And that's that's why she's, I mean, I'm a Cyborg fan, but you got to say that Nunes is GOAT.
I don't got to say that, and I
was with you all the way up to that point.
Yeah,
I was really with you all the way
Nunes
up
is
there.
not Nunes is not GOAT. What I can say is Nunes was actually surprised because her game plan was completely rendered ineffective when Holly Holm stood in front of her, and she said as much in the post fight press conference. She said she had trained for Holly Holm to run the whole first round. Like, she was like, I'm going to have to chase Holly Holm. That was her game plan, was to chase. And she's like, and Holly Holm stood right in front of me. She was like, I went to plan B, and it's like, this favors my style. Like, Holly Holm is going to fight me. This is great. So, if anything, we talk about game planning. Like, I want to know why Holly Holm, who has been so effective at getting on the bicycle and running around the ring and trying to set up these interesting counters where someone tries to throw while they're chasing and then she catches them. That's how she got Ronda Rousey. But instead, she just stood in front of Amanda Nunes, just stood in the pocket, and it was only a matter of time before she got taken out.
Well, maybe it was one of those scenarios where she wanted to do the one thing that was least thought of, which was, in this case, fight Nunes at her own game. I mean, Greg Jackson is known to be crafty like that. I mean, just like I can think of numerous fights where he would send a fighter to fight that fighter's style. Like, for instance, when John Jones versus Rashad Evans, I'm sorry, not Rashad Evans, but Rampage Jackson. He told Bones to take him down. Do not fight his game, because that's what he wants. There have been times when he fought Rashad Evans. He sat there and out wrestled him. Okay, and we'll talk more about John Jones and Maheta and later on tonight, and I'll explain it further.
Oh yeah, but the thing that I have is, does Amanda have an impressive record? She absolutely does. Heads on the wall. I really like that graphic that they have of her sitting on a throne and all the heads are on the people she beat on the wall. But she's got Miesha Tate, she's got Ronda Rousey, she got Valentina Shevchenko, She's got Chris Cyborg, and now she's got Holly Holm. You know, that's great. That makes her a great bantamweight champion. But what she doesn't have is she's only got 2 title defenses. Like when you look at Ronda Rousey, she's got 8 title defenses. When you look at Joanna Jędrzejczyk, she has 7 title defenses. So there's still work for Amanda Nunes to do before you're going to call her GOAT. I mean, there's lots of things you can call her, and all of them are great, but you're not going to say of all time when you still got this work to do.
Yeah. She's got potential. She's potentially one of the greatest female fighters out there.
Yep.
But
today
you got to put some more notches on that belt.
Yeah, being the first champ with increasing difficulty in the types of fighters who are multifaceted. But sure, she could fight some more people.
Yeah, no, but that's the thing is that, okay, well, she's the first female champ, but there's 2 other champs out there, and we're talking about greatest of all time. So if we're going to say, oh, greatest female fighter of all time, then okay, she is the first champ. However, Valentina Shevchenko is well positioned to be able to be a champ as well. So is it because you're the first champ that makes you GOAT? Or is it because you were champ? You've got the number of title defenses. Valentina Shevchenko probably not going to get challenged very much at 125. And Valentina Shevchenko fought Amanda Nunes to a unanimous decision, right? Or she lost, but she fought 5 rounds with Amanda Nunes. So
still lost. Why is Valentina in this conversation if she's lost to the person?
Because at the same time, Valentina Shevchenko is a smaller fighter. She's a 125-pound fighter fighting at 135. And she's a younger fighter, so she's got more time to replicate and exceed those things that Amanda Nunes has done, right?
Done. Yeah, so Nunes is the standard, and yet we won't call her GOAT.
Because you're talking of all time. You can call her GOAT, but you can't say of all time. That's the whole thing. Of all time means it's transcendent. It doesn't matter what generation that you compare her to, that she is still going to exceed that.
Yeah,
and you can't get there yet.
About Stanko in a conversation about Nunes. Like, Shevchenko's not on Nunes' level.
This is of all time. So if you're just talking about bantamweights, okay. But you're going to have to constrain it to bantamweights. So she's the greatest female bantamweight of all time, is what you're saying.
Nope. She's the greatest female UFC fighter.
Then you can now see, once you say greatest female UFC fighter, now you're including people like Valentina Shevchenko and Joanna Jędrzejczyk and Chris Cyborg. And the fact is that if you're just looking at stats, those stats can be overcome. Because at the end of the day, yes, Miesha Tate is a name, but Miesha Tate's been in there for a long time. We could say that Ronda Rousey, even though she had a ton of fanfare and did tremendously more for the UFC and women in MMA than Amanda Nunes has, her striking was overrated.
The greatest of all time being who was the best fighter. I don't like all of the other accolades around it don't matter. Like, yeah, you're more marketable, okay, but could you fight?
Yes, but at some point, Amanda Nunes' career has to end. And when it ends, it has to be transcendent to earn the of all time moniker. So you can't call her the greatest of all time, one, when she hasn't done all the things that other champions have done.
But she's beaten all the other champions.
Okay, that's a stat. That's one stat.
To be the best, you got to beat the best, right?
Yes, but you also have to defend the title. Because if she were to lose her next fight, then, I guess she wasn't the greatest of all time. Because she only had 2 title defenses.
I would say that, but
if she loses her next fight, then then all of a sudden this GOAT moniker is like the freaking crown whenever you're doing Mario Kart or whatever and you're in first place. Someone else goes in the first place and now they're the greatest of all time. That is no longer the of all time standard. Of all time means it doesn't matter what happens to you, you are still the greatest. That's how it works. And if beating former champions is the way to be the greatest, then I mean, you have to know that it's going to come to a point where there's going to be an up and coming fighter, and it may be at the end of Amanda Nunes' career, and they're going to beat Amanda Nunes.
Yeah, but you're putting on some stuff that I've never said. Like, I'm not saying that if she loses tomorrow, I wouldn't still consider her the greatest. I don't know where that snuck in, because I've never said that.
No, but
if she lost tomorrow, I'd still say she is the greatest of all time.
That the point that I'm making is that then she starts having a career where it can be eclipsed. And if her career is eclipsed, if her wins, because we're only using wins as the barometer for what the greatest of all time is, someone will always win more fights. That Muhammad Ali, majority of people consider him the greatest of all time. Even though there's been generations upon generations of fighters who have had better careers. I mean, Floyd Mayweather has had a better career than Muhammad Ali. But nobody's calling Floyd Mayweather the greatest of all time. There's a reason for that. That Muhammad Ali's career was transcendent. So you have to that is the kind of standard that greatest of all time has to achieve, where it's transcendent. And right now, because Amanda Nunes, while she is the first female double champ, while she is a person who has beaten former champs, she's only got 2 title defenses. That's more work to do. That's all I'm saying. She is well positioned to be the greatest of all time, but she's got work to do. You can't make that distinction now.
I'll concede that. So who is the greatest of all time at this point?
At women's MMA?
Yep.
I don't think that there is one. I don't think that you can crown anyone. Who's best positioned? I think Nunes is very well positioned, but I also think Ronda Rousey is well positioned. Even with her suspect striking.
All right, fair enough. The opinions are out there. Time will tell.
Yeah, time will tell. But when I start thinking about how I define greatest of all time, no one has brought more women to the sport than Ronda Rousey. No one. That can't be eclipsed. It's very difficult to bring more people to the sport, more eyes to the sport, make the sport to another level, and do the things that she's done and setting the records that she's set. Fastest knockouts or fastest finishes in women's MMA history. 8 title defenses. That's a pretty dang good resume, even with suspect striking.
And suspect competition. And we're just going to ignore the fact that she's basically just given the first championship. But yeah, that stuff.
I mean, she did fight Liz Carmouche for that belt. And she beat Liz Carmouche for that belt. So she wasn't, I mean, you can call it given, but she fought competition for the belt. I don't know. Let's go on. In the main event of the evening, John Bones Jones defeated Thiago Santos Marreta via split decision. Now, this was an interesting fight because a lot of people call this fight a boring fight, but I didn't see it as a boring fight. I thought this was an interesting technical fight where both fighters had much to gain, but a lot more to lose.
I loved it. I didn't see the boring aspect of it at all, especially because if you look at John Jones' last 2 fights, he had fighters who were just basically fighting his name. They were afraid of him, and so they never really let loose, whereas Marreta was throwing hammers right out of the gate. He was ready to do work, but he never got crazy with it. He was still focused and throwing good. He was setting things up well. Like, to me, that was just a great chess match.
The leg kicks, though, like the leg kicks from Marreta set the tone for the fight. And I think that it's an interesting thing because we have never seen anyone throw leg kicks the way Thiago Santos did. And we've never seen John Jones react the way that he did. I mean, he almost got swept a couple of times just with leg kicks.
Yep. And it made me realize just how skinny his legs truly are. Oh my goodness. It's disproportionate.
Yeah, he's got those John Keys legs.
Oh. Wow. Shots fired. Shots fired.
John Keys must either have dropped or he is on mute.
I was on mute. I'm so sorry. I'm sitting here trying to have a conversation. Like, these guys ain't giving me no time. Okay, I got y'all. I know where you work. I know where you work, man. I know. No. I'm here. Okay, so.
Skinny legs. You got a comment?
Yes.
Do you agree with what we were saying?
See. Yes, I do.
Nice. I'm glad you did.
Folks, this man.
And thank you and good night, people.
Yeah. You just wait till you listen to this, and we know you were multitasking or doing something else because, dadgummit, you were gonna love what we were saying.
Yeah, I know I am.
Skinny legs.
Why are you doing them like this? Why would you do this? Anyway, John.
I thank you for work from home tomorrow. That's all I got to say, Ryan.
Hey, look, you're injured. You're injured too. I'll put you on the list with Rockhold and Cejudo. Here's the question that I have for you, John. Okay. So John Jones won the fight, but not everybody agreed that he won the fight. Do you have John Jones winning the fight, and what rounds did you have him winning?
I had him barely winning. It was the split decision was right. He may have won. Let's see here. Not round one. I didn't give it to him. Maybe rounds 2, 4, and 5. Definitely the moment that Santos's knee started buckling, that's when he started losing. Okay. Dana White went so far to say that he was totally dominating that fight. He was not dominating that fight. He actually respected, if anything, John respected and almost started fearing Santos's power. If anybody saw, Santos was doing the things that everybody else should have been doing, which was not fearing that the man that John Jones is, and actually start throwing punches and bunches. All right. The only thing, though, when his knees started buckling, that's what cost him. In my opinion, that's what really cost him the fight, because he was throwing those inside leg kicks to the point that if you actually saw his legs, his left thigh was bigger than his right, and they both had to be carried out for whichever reason. I think they need to run it back. I know they need to run it back. Dana White has said that there is no reason to, because he saw total domination. In my opinion, that's Dana protecting John Jones.
All right, KC, what rounds did you have John Jones winning?
Maybe third, fifth. I don't know. I don't believe he won the fight.
Oh wow.
Wow. And there's an argument for that.
Round one has to go to Maheta. Round two, minus the fact that his knee appeared to be re-injured, I still give that to Maheta. Like, I mean, you got 2 out of 5 right there, and then some of the others get a little iffy, but I don't know that John Jones dominated this fight in any way, shape, or form.
And he did not, in my opinion.
So the thing is, I remember way back in the day, the people used to be mad at George St. Pierre for winning by decision. And George St. Pierre came out and said, listen, I'm now, like, you guys remember me when I was fighting up-and-coming fighters, and I was able to finish people, and I was able to do whatever I wanted to do. He's like, now I'm fighting the best of the best, and you just can't put people out the way that you were doing the way that I was doing when I was working my way up the ladder. And I think this is one of those cases where Thiago Santos is so dangerous that any punch could put you out, that I don't think that you can fight the type of fight that John Jones is known for fighting. Now, for me, I had John Jones winning this fight 48-47. I had Thiago Santos winning rounds 1 and 5. I had John Jones winning 2, 3, and 4. I felt like 2 was close, but John Jones definitely began to exert his dominance in that ring during those rounds. I mean, he cut Maheta with an elbow. I think it was in the second round. In the third round, he landed that flying knee that he literally jumped over Maheta from a standing position, jumped over him and landed on the other side. But he landed that knee. Like John Jones was doing what he had to do while staying out of range. And I think if you look at the stats, John Jones outstruck him in second round, third round, fourth round. And I think he might have even outstruck him in the fifth round. So I didn't see what other people are saying, that Thiago Santos was somehow winning that fight. Now, did the knee have something to do with it? Yes. That he didn't have the mobility, he didn't have the strength, he wasn't able to do his whole strategy because he was nursing a hurt knee. And so because of that, I do think they should run it back. I think John Jones says, I would like to see him in a rematch when he gets better. So I think we will see this again. But John Jones also said, hey, I fought him where he is strong. And he goes, maybe that was not the best idea. He's like, but my pride got challenged and I fought him where he was strong. He says, in a next fight, I probably won't do that. So what that means is we're going to see a much different John Jones. We're going to see him take Maheta down, and we're going to see what Maheta can do while he's on his back and John Jones is grounding and pounding him. And that's not the kind of fight that we've ever seen Maheta have to do.
Yeah. I mean, and I agree. That's what he's going to. He did state that he saw Maheta as a stand-up fighter. He wanted to fight him on the feet. That is not the brightest thing to do, because honestly, you can't take pride in winning a split decision fight with a one-legged kickboxer. Okay, you cannot do that. And I mean, if he was really challenged, I think if Maheta hit him hard enough, he would have took him down any time in that fight and just beat him on the ground. I honestly believe that. So I do, in my opinion, it needs to be ran back. Jones will take him down next time. He's not even going to play with him. He's going to take him down. He's going to ground and pound him, in my opinion.
Yep, I think so. I think we're going to see this is going to be like when Alexander Gustafsson fought him the second time. We're going to see him take him down, and that's going to be it. Here's one of the things that I wanted to ask. We just got into it about Amanda Nunes being the GOAT. John Jones, is he the GOAT?
By the numbers. No. Yeah.
You sound conflicted. KC, are you on mute, or do you have an opinion here?
I was just waiting to let you guys flesh this one out first.
I'll let you go first, Casey. Let me get this out, because I gotta really ask myself: do I give him the title of GOAT? Because, well, no, I'll give him the title of GOAT with an asterisk. There you go.
He hasn't popped for it. No one's mentioned him popping for picograms lately. Like, I haven't seen anything that says he's popped.
Because see, you know what the new rule is. So
I do.
Yes, where they're not gonna let you know that he popped until they can positively say that he's been busted. So we don't know if he could be popping right now, but they won't let him go because they know for the next possible 7 years, or quote unquote the rest of his fighting life, that he'll be juicing. So no, he's the GOAT with an asterisk, as far as I'm concerned.
KC.
My GOAT. Are we talking about at that division or what?
No, we're talking about GOAT, greatest of all time, greatest. John Jones. He's beaten the champions, just like Amanda Nunes.
Spider Anderson Silva.
But John Jones has beaten former champions. Shogun Hua,
And
Rampage Jackson.
So
He's beaten Rashad Evans. Like Anderson Silva doesn't have that pedigree.
Same names? Anthony Smith. Anthony Smith has that same pedigree.
So I feel like my point was made about Amanda Nunes then.
You wish.
Here's the awesome thing. Here's the awesome thing about John Jones. They asked John Jones, "Do you think you're the GOAT?" And he said, "No, I'm not the GOAT." He says, "I'm the most dominant light heavyweight in history." He says, "You can be the most dominant and be a douchebag, but you can't be a douchebag and be great." So he says he prefers to be considered the most dominant light heavyweight in history. And I think that is a fair that's a fair assessment. So what do I call Amanda Nunes? The most dominant female bantamweight in history. John Jones, the most dominant light heavyweight in history.
And your GOAT is?
Mike, we've been over this. You know exactly who my GOAT is. My GOAT is Hoist Gracie.
I can live with that.
Shoot. Hey, we're all entitled to be wrong, so.
Yeah. all I know is that everybody's working on their Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and I don't know how many Brazilian jiu-jitsu gyms opened up when Hoist Gracie was winning fights that had no time limits, that had no weight classes. Like, I don't know. I'm not gonna. We can have a whole other show just talking about who the GOAT is and why Hoist Gracie is better positioned than the rest of them. But I don't see anybody opening Sambo gyms in the DFW area. I'm not seeing, branded kickboxing academies that with somebody's name on it. But I do see Gracie gyms opening up all over the place. I do see other styles of other schools of Brazilian jiu-jitsu opening up all over the place, and it's been doing that ever since Hoist Gracie. You ask a casual about fighters that they know the names of, and Hoist Gracie is still 20 years, 25 years later, still on the tongues of people.
Ooh,
greatest of all times.
That is easily tested. I think we should field test that tomorrow.
Yeah,
I think that's a false statement.
So
people will say Conor McGregor over Hoist Gracie.
So people know Hoist Gracie. That's the point. So you don't have to field test it, because I'm sure there's an exception or two. But when I talk to people about being a UFC fan or MMA, they'll bring up Hoist Gracie. They'll bring up George St. Pierre. They may ask after Conor McGregor, but Hoist Gracie is still in a conversation 25 years later. That's transcendent.
Do you honestly think that Conor McGregor will be around 25 years from now?
Yeah, I think he's made an indelible mark on the MMA community. He's the reason that trash talking is so accepted. Trying to be gentleman and nice about it. He changed the game with that.
So, I thought Tito Ortiz was the one that actually did that, but
I don't know that Tito Ortiz was a great. Like Conor, I agree with Casey on this. Conor has a way with a microphone that Tito Ortiz never did. Like, for me, if I were to say that someone became really great on the mic, it would be for me Chael Sonnen, right? Like,
yes,
but the difference between Chael Sonnen and Conor McGregor is that Chael Sonnen was basically doing old professional wrestling bits. He was doing old Ric Flair. Like, if you followed professional wrestling, you would know that he's doing bits that Ric Flair did. Conor McGregor was coming off the top of his head and just talking and creating just pandemonium with his charisma. And KC, Conor McGregor is well positioned to eclipse what Royce Gracie has done, but the dude hasn't fought since 229, and he lost that fight, and he lost the fight before that, right? Or no, the fight before that was Eddie Alvarez. So I mean, it's like that was like 2 years ago. So you have to bring both of these things to the GOAT conversation. You've got to be the champ.
Yeah,
you've got to have a great record.
Again, that conversation.
What?
If Conor never fights again, the casual will still keep his name in that conversation, greatest of all time.
I think that Conor has a resume that can get him in that conversation. I still think that Royce Gracie was better for the sport, but if we talk about people who would be in the conversation, I don't know how you can't have Conor in that conversation at some point in the future, especially if Proper 12 becomes a global brand and we start seeing other fighters start having their own branded liqueurs and other branded clothing and stuff like that they're doing. Like if you start seeing fighters have side businesses that become global brands from an MMA perspective, then that elevates Conor's impact to the game. And when I'm using my definition of what a GOAT is, like right now, Conor has planted the seed with Proper 12. But if we start seeing the George St. Pierre branded syrup, and it becomes
syrup.
He's from Canada. I'm trying to come up with something. But if it becomes a global brand, we see the Kamaru Usman gold watches, and it becomes a global brand. Then we start seeing these fighters following Conor's lead at having thriving businesses while they're competing. And that becomes a transcendent type thing that other fighters have become double champs, because he was the first male double champ in the UFC. Other fighters became double champs. Other fighters have won more fights and beaten more people than Conor McGregor has. But now you start talking about this is a transcendent story that if other fighters emulate, then you have a resume that can be in the greatest of all time conversation. That's how I approach that title.
Just made my Nunes point.
I don't know how I did that. I don't know how Amanda Nunes has done something that is transcendent. I just don't know how she's done something that transcendent. Double champ. Yes, but Daniel Cormier was double champ. You got,
remember, because that was the whole thing you just said.
Well, he was the first double champ, yes, but Daniel Cormier became a double champ. Henry Cejudo is a double champ and a gold medalist, Olympic gold medalist.
Again, we're talking about the women.
And my point is, and we can drop it after this. If I'll let you have the last word, but the point is that being double champ is a nice line item on the resume, but it does not define being GOAT, because other people can become double champs. Just because you were the first doesn't mean that you were the best.
Yeah, that's fair.
So
support it.
All right. You have anything else you want to say before we go on?
Boom. Rocked them.
I love it. All right, so there you go. That is our extended coverage of UFC 239. Now we're going to hop into, very quickly, Finding the Angles. Finding the Angles. This is Finding the Angles. This is where we talk about the headlines and the topics that people are talking about in the wake of the UFC 239. First thing we're going to talk about, Khabib and Nate Diaz get into a verbal altercation at UFC 239. They're literally sitting in the audience. Nate Diaz goes walking by, says a few things to Khabib. Next thing you know, Khabib's jumping up. His boys are jumping up. Ali is jumping up. Security's coming. Security. and they have to pull them apart. There was no incident, but there was a ruckus. Lots of cameras were getting the footage of what was going on. Do you think there's any juice to this? Could we potentially see a Khabib and Nate fight after the Dustin Poirier or after Tony Ferguson?
Yes, that's what Ali wanted. That's what Ali wants. He's petitioning. He's saying that once they're through Dustin Poirier, he wants Nate Diaz.
What about Tony?
Man, what about Tony? I mean, Tony didn't disrespect the Dagestani Eagle. He wants. He's going for it.
I would hope that these guys can become above this, because getting title shots based on trash talking is old.
I agree with you there. I 100% agree with you. I don't want to see Nate Diaz. I don't think Nate Diaz has done anything to justify in the octagon. He's not done anything in the octagon to justify a title shot against Khabib Nurmagomedov.
I agree with that. Okay. However, we know how prideful these two men are. Okay. Nate Diaz could have potentially just talked himself into a title shot. Okay. Potentially. I hope cooler heads will prevail in this, but let's consider the source, and let's pray that just didn't happen.
I'm with KC. I'd like to think that Khabib Nurmagomedov isn't so easily baited into a title shot at a fight that you're still on suspension for. You know what I'm saying? Like he's still suspended, right? I
think he's suspended for. Let's see, I think he's suspended to September, I think.
Yeah, I think suspension goes to September, and then he fights like in October or something like that. Yeah, or he's suspended through August and he fights in September. It's something where, but like, if I would like to believe that Khabib is not so easily baited that some Nate Diaz can come walking by and pull you into a title fight. I have more respect for Khabib to think that he would not allow this to happen.
Hey, gangsters will be gangsters, dude. That's just it.
All right. John Jones said he'd fight DC at heavyweight if the money was right. He also said that if Stipe won the rematch between DC and Stipe, he'd fight Stipe too. So I think that John Jones is open to the idea of fighting at heavyweight now. It's all about the money, and what he said is that he's pretty sure that DC would do the same if the money was right. I think the money is probably going to be right, but it was interesting that DC said that he'd also fight Francis Ngannou, and I think I wish he'd been fighting Francis Ngannou instead of Stipe Miocic anyway.
I don't think he wants to fight One Punch Man. I don't think he wants to.
I think he does.
Was just talking it. I think he was just talking at that point, because I don't care if you can get One Punch Man onto the ground, and Ngannou is going to hit you, and you're going to know it, because he'll hit you to the point where you think you're sitting at a restaurant trying to order up something, and then he's going to hit you again, and then you're going to be like, oh wow, I'm still in the ring and I'm about to die, and that's what he's going to do, and that's not pretty.
I just think that Ngannou is pretty helpless. He's like a turtle. You put the turtle on his back, and it's like helpless.
I hope so.
It's a big if, right? If you can get Ngannou on his back, it's a big if. But once you do, we've seen that Stipe Miocic, who is not known for his wrestling, like somebody on one of the message boards was like, "Oh, Stipe can wrestle." It's like nobody thinks of Stipe and thinks of wrestling. That is Stipe would be an average wrestler on his best day. And you got Daniel Cormier, who is an Olympic wrestler. This guy, I was gonna say we've seen what DC can do to Stipe, but we really haven't, because all he did was knock him out by holding him in the clinch.
Well, technically, that's what he could do to Stipe, is hold him in the clinch and boop boop, and he's out. All right, so I mean that's pretty much. Something tells me that's going to be a repeat. that he's going to get him in the clinch. He's going to do a little dirty boxing, and one of them blows is going to take him out.
All right. So this gives me a nice segue into my double title match. I really want to see this happen. All right. So for you listeners out there, the double title match goes like this. John Jones versus DC at light heavyweight, but they put both belts on the line because the maximum weight of heavyweight is 265, and they will have already made that weight when they weigh in at light heavyweight. So they could put both belts on the line. It becomes a win or go home. This is DC's last fight. Both belts on the line. He could either walk away into history with both belts, having beaten his arch nemesis in his last fight of his career, or he could walk away empty-handed and John Jones emerges as the new heavyweight champion of the world, double champ, and the story lives on for John Jones. Now, here's what I learned, because I put this on Twitter and I copied UFC, Dana White, I copied Sean Shelby, I put DC on it, I put John Jones, I retweeted it and put it to Ariel Helwani and Karen Bryant and Damian Martin and Luke Thomas, and I'm like, we got to make this happen. I put this on every message board that I am a part of, and I got one piece of interesting evidence that I didn't know before, and so it has modified my idea only slightly. Because I'm still onto this. In order to qualify for a heavyweight fight, you have to weigh in at least 206 pounds. To qualify, we already know championship weight is 205 at light heavyweight. But in order for you to sanction a heavyweight fight, you have to weigh in at 206. So that creates a conundrum, because if you weigh in at 206, then you won't be at heavyweight. A light heavyweight weight, championship weight, and if you weigh in at 205, you won't be at heavyweight weight. So to solve this, you weigh in twice. You sanction the fight. You weigh in one. Listen, you weigh in at 205. You make 205. You rehydrate. You're going to put on at least a pound. And so then you've weighed in at 205. You've weighed in at 206 or greater. And you've now qualified for both a heavyweight and a light heavyweight fight. That fight has both belts on the line. It's one fight that rules them all.
Okay, so this is why,
because they're two separate fights weighing in on.
Exactly,
it's one fight. Like everybody's talking about, like everybody's talking like they don't like they have the rule book in front of them. Like, you don't have the rule book in front of you. This has never been done before. There's not a rule that governs this. It's a loophole.
Okay. Actually, it's not a loophole. It's a rule. Okay, you can only weigh in once. All right, for said fight. Okay, that's the reason why they create. See, I'm glad you brought that up, because now it all makes sense. Why when you're weighing in for championship bouts, you must weigh in at this weight. If it's a non-championship bout, you can weigh in a pound over. All right, I understand that now because of what you just did. All right, that you can only do it for one weight. All right, anything less than that, just because it's never been done before, means that it can't be done.
Right? This is it. This is the whole thing, and this is what I've been dealing with. With all the message boards, everybody's talking like this has been done before, and that they have a rule book in front of them, and they're talking with authority when they don't know the rules. Like, you're telling me that you've read this in a book, that this is how it has to go. And I know you haven't.
I'm not saying that I've read it from a book.
So you're telling me like this can't happen, and you're saying logically to me this can't happen, but you don't know definitively that this can't happen.
Okay. You know what? Challenge accepted, sir.
This is the challenge that I'm laying out to anybody that can hear my voice. Prove me wrong. Call up Nevada State Athletic Commission. Call up California State Athletic Commission. Let's ask them. It's never been done before. It's not in a book.
Here's the thing. There's this whole notion in science that just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it.
That's an ethics conversation. That's not that's not a probability of
This makes a mockery of UFC. Like, to have to come up with this elaborate workaround to make this happen. Just put one belt on the line. You don't gain anything from this whole thing.
You absolutely do. The storyline that comes out of a winner take all matchup between two fighters who don't like each other, who have the history that they have, who have one win and one no contest. This is one of those things that could be the most watched UFC fight in history. You want to add on all of those little nuances and things within the storyline. So, that's an ethics conversation of whether or not just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. That's not a is it possible or is it not possible. And so many people have said that it is not possible, but they don't know if it's possible or not. They just don't think it's possible.
It is possible, and I'm sitting here thinking about it. The only way that it can be done is if you weigh in for the higher weight belt and put the other one on as an incentive.
But you couldn't do that.
You couldn't do that. You'd have to weigh in for the lower belt. Because to meet the qualifications of a championship fight at light heavyweight, you have to weigh in at 205. We all understand that. The question is,
you have a language fallacy that you're missing. Mm-hmm. So I think you are correct in that you can weigh in for a light heavyweight fight at 205, but then you have to weigh in for a heavyweight fight at 206. The problem we have is those are separate fights that you are weighing in for. It is not one fight. Like, that's just in the language.
That we don't necessarily know that is a requirement. We're only assuming that it is a requirement, that if I weigh in at heavyweight, that is weighing in for a separate fight. In order for me to sanction a heavyweight fight, I have to weigh at 206, which if I'm on record for having a 206, then I can sanction this fight as a heavyweight fight as well. Because the fact is that in order for me to put the belt up, I just have to prove that I weighed in at the appropriate weight. We can put two belts on the line, and if we've met the requirements for both, I don't know that there's anything that has ever been said that you can't have one fight representing two weight classes. I can schedule the fight for the exact same time in the exact same place, two separate fights happening at the exact same time with the same two fighters. Uh-huh. That does not mean that the probability is zero that we can't do that. That's all I'm saying, is that it's never been done before. It breaks conventional wisdom, but it doesn't mean that it could not be done. If we can prove that it can't be done, then great. Then I can stop this campaign. But I'm not going to stop this campaign just because we think it can't be done, because it's never been done before. And I'm sure that the UFC could just go, okay, well, this could make a lot of money, so we're just going to have this fight in Macau or Australia or wherever. So it absolutely can be done. The question is that can we do it in Las Vegas? Can we do it at Madison Square Garden?
Well,
can we do it at the Staples Center?
Yeah, you would have to go. I think California and Nevada would be a little bit more flexible in the interpretation. I don't think New York will be. I mean, honestly,
let's be clear that and one of the people on my message board said it best. He said the UFC was willing to move an entire pay-per-view for John Jones because Nevada was concerned about him popping and California wasn't. And so they moved an entire pay-per-view 3 hours down the road because they could get sanctioned in that sport. So, what I'm looking for is, can this be done? And would there be someone who would sanction it? And I think that there would be. So this debate continues. All right. Two more, and then we'll say our adieus. UFC Hall of Fame 2019 inductees. We've got 4 people were inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame over International Fight Weekend. Now, for those of you who aren't accustomed to the UFC Hall of Fame, there are 4 wings of the UFC Hall of Fame. There's the Pioneer wing, where they celebrate people who contributed to the rise of the UFC. You've got the modern era, who are the fighters fighting today. You've got the contributors, and these are people who did not actually enter the cage, but also worked behind the scenes to make the UFC what it is. And then you have the fight wing, where great fights and fighters who participated in great fights are elected and nominated into the Hall of Fame. And so we had 5 fighters go in. We had Rich Franklin, who was a Hall of Fame pioneer, one of the early UFC fighters. We had the UFC Modern. We had Rashad Evans and Michael Bisping. And then for the Hall of Fame fight, we had Diego Sanchez and Clay Guida.
Hey,
so
all legit to me. We had Rich Franklin, the guy that was dominant in the middleweight division before Anderson Silva broke his face. We have Rashad Evans, who shocked the world by knocking out Chuck Liddell. Michael Bisping, say what you will about the man. Michael Bisping was an oh darn it, I said it again. Dang it, I thought I was gonna go a whole show without saying it. He was a character. All right, love him, hate him, whatever. He was a dogged fighter though. Okay, when the UFC, when Dana needed somebody to replace a fight, he was always there willing to do it. So, kudos to him, and he finally got a belt. And as far as the fight, the Diego Sanchez versus Clay Guida, I remember that fight. Okay, that happened years ago, and I remember that fight because it was like watching 2 caged dogs, all right, getting ready to fight. It was crazy, and it was crazy cardio, crazy pace, and it was just a great fight all the way around. So all of it's legit.
And that was saying, one of the things that Diego Sanchez said is that there are people who said that the first round of the Diego Sanchez and Clay Guida fight is the reason why they are into the UFC today. Like, those are the types of fights that I think, I just think it's interesting that you get people who are going to the Hall of Fame because of one competition, one night, 3 rounds, worthy of Hall of Fame. I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, on the one hand, I think that it's, on the one hand, I'm like, well, why wouldn't they? Like, I think that Rory McDonald and Robbie Lawler are a shoo-in for Hall of Fame fight. I mean, in for fighters who have given blood, sweat, and tears for the sport, but never achieved those high levels, there's a way to get in. I think that that's kind of cool. But at the same time, it's like, but you guys never achieved those really high levels. We were talking about greatest of all time and most dominant fighter and all of these other accolades. Like, Diego Sanchez and Clay Guida never achieved that. But I don't have the heartburn that they get into the Hall of Fame that I did for Matt Serra.
It seems like you got a little vitriol there for Matt Serra.
I just don't think that he did anything that was so noteworthy. I mean, he literally, his claim to fame is that he knocked out George St. Pierre. Like, that is his claim to fame. He didn't do anything else. He didn't even defend the title. He lost it to George St. Pierre. I mean, he beat George St. Pierre, and then he immediately lost it to George St. Pierre. So,
just saying, man.
But we have a whole show of me ranting on Matt Serra,
which was a great show, by the way.
Last thing, and this is for KC. One championship continues its U.S. expansion with an idea of not selling fights but building heroes. And I say this is for KC because of the fact that, over the 100 shows that we have done, KC has on numerous occasions talked about how the UFC has really fallen off because it has chosen to create controversy and promote fighters for talking their way into fights and not building the type of fighters that align with the ethos of martial arts. And One Championship is seeking to create their own way in the U.S. market by differentiating itself and doing what KC has always said that a promotion should do: build heroes, build martial artists, and not Colby Covingtons and Henry Cejudos of the world. So KC, I want to get your take on that. What do you think?
I'm full fanboy when it comes to ONE FC. I think it does 100% fit with the ethos of martial arts. But even the storylines that they're able to tell for their promo videos on Instagram, Facebook, and other outlets, like, it's just so much more compelling because it really is about the fighter's story and and how they plan on winning versus just trash talking, which at the end it's just trash. So in differentiating themselves, it's the action that they show, the highlight reels that they have. Like, it's the stuff that makes you want to go check it out versus, UFC fighters are talking trash. Like, I don't need the soap opera. I watched wrestling as a kid with my dad, but it was more of us bonding. Like, as an adult, I don't care about the storylines. Like, I don't need that. I want to see good martial arts, and ONE FC has found a way to not just give me the good martial arts, but actually care about the fighters. Like, you're invested in the fighters without having to trash talk. Like, this is good marketing. This is what the UFC never figured out, was how to take talent and market them instead of making them have to just become heels. Like, the UFC is basically going to become just all heels, whereas ONE FC is building storylines for people that you want to keep following. So I think that they're going to be successful.
I actually like it, and the thing is that I've always felt like Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson never got his due in the UFC, and I felt like he himself was one of the most dominant flyweights in the history of the UFC. He was its first champion. He was a person who exhibited all kinds of striking, submission, wrestling prowess. I even went so far as to say that Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson represents the embodiment of Jeet Kune Do and the mixed martial artist that Bruce Lee imagined. Not that he practices the art of Jeet Kune Do, but just what Jeet Kune Do was designed to try to embody. I felt like Demetrius Johnson was that complete artist, and now he's in a place where they are going to celebrate him for what he can do and not penalize him for what he's not willing to do. And so I share your celebration of ONE FC because that is what would be the preferable thing. Now, while I am willing to accept the trash talk and the controversy because it makes great storylines, I really do hope that ONE FC is able to change the game there because it could become the greatest of all time. John, last words.
I don't have any words for that. I mean, you pretty much said it. I love the fact that ONE FC is building heroes. Sid Young, I knew I've seen that name somewhere. He had a gym. He had a gym where Kenny Florian was training out of. It's a very high reputable Muay Thai gym and MMA gym, and I know this is what they have the ability to do. What UFC should have been doing from day one. Good luck to them.
All right. Well, there you have it. That is Finding the Angles. We would typically do a fight card next, but this is our 100th show, and we are going to go on hiatus. This is going to be the last show for a while. Going to take a break. It's summertime. We're going to retool the show. We're going to start looking at how we can create more video content, create more reaction videos, and have much more engagement with the fans and future MMA stars that we have in our community. So we are going, but we are not saying goodbye. We will say we'll see you soon. But until then, follow us on social media. On Twitter, I'm at CST Ryan.
I'm at Keys to Victory, and that's Keys with an ES.
On Instagram, I am at Combat Sports Talk.
And I am at Push Pull Pray.
And once again, Keys to Victory with a ES.
All right. I actually got to sit with George Stallworth, and we have a live reaction show video, or not video. We have a live reaction show recording that we did for UFC 239. So I'll be posting that along with this tonight's 100 episode. And we have merchandise. Just go to our website, www.combatsportstalk.com, and click that link if you want to get yourself a Combat Sports Talk shirt. We're on every one of your podcasts, so you can check out old episodes, and listen to some of the hilarity that we've produced over the years. Anything else before we go on hiatus, fellas?
I want to say thank you to you, Ryan, and thank you, Casey, for allowing me to join you guys. I've been with the show since I think episode 40. And it's been a crazy ride. It's been a pleasure. I will see you guys. We will be back soon, and we will be back stronger than ever.
Casey?
Don't forget to tip your waiters and vote.
Oh, my God.
All right.
And wear clean underwear, please. Wear clean underwear. Oh, my God. Yeah,
All right. Our theme music is composed by Scott McCurry at scottdeancountry.com, and KC Onyebuchi produced our lead-ins. I want to thank you for joining us for another edition of Combat Sports Talk. For KC Onyebuchi and John Keys, I'm Ryan Smith, reminding you to keep your hands up, your chin tucked, and throw bombs.